So as Joanna said, I'm going to be talking about this project on mapping every school in the world, and I'm going to start telling you a little bit about the motivation behind it. So as you all know, we live in a world that is changing very quickly, where we are more and more connected, and that's changing the way we work with each other, the way we communicate, and it's bringing many opportunities. But this access to information, it's not affecting in an equal way to everyone. And in particular, children living in remote areas or children that might be more vulnerable are the ones that are being worse impacted. And this means that these children are being left behind and they don't have access to the same opportunity and to the same choice. In fact, some statistics say that there are around 4 billion people in the world that still don't have access to the internet. Most of them are in sub-Saharan Africa. And at the same time, the population of young people and children it's growing very quickly. By 2030, it's gonna be around 2 billion youth in the world. So UNICEF is looking into how can we make sure that this growing population of young people has the same access to opportunity as we do. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit the work that we've done over the past 2 years, but also what are we looking at this moment and what we are planning to do over the next year or so. Wait there, 1 second, sorry. My slides are not moving. No. They were moving perfectly well. Okay, yeah, got it. Sorry for that. Yeah, this is a girl that I met a couple of years ago in Manaus, in the Amazon. Manaus is the capital of the Amazon. As you may know, Amazon is this huge rainforest, and the population density over there is very low. This girl comes from an indigenous community, and her family was originally living in a small village very far from Manaus, where that you could only reach by boat. But that meant also that in these places it's very hard to access some basic services, and that's why her family had to move to the main capital. And this is not the case just for her, but there are many children in this area that don't have access to the right education. They live in these small villages where there are no enough qualified teachers, where learning materials may not be updated and may have been developed in places that are not relevant for them. So for example, they might be learning about apples and skyscrapers when they don't have this type of objects around them. To solve this problem, the government of Brazil already a few years ago has started a program called the Media Center, and they provide secondary education through satellite connectivity. So how does this work? This program already serves 45 children that are based in these communities that are very difficult to access or to reach. They sit in classrooms, and they have a satellite dish in their community that is able to receive this signal and this content in real time. They have it for a few hours a day, and it's already deployed in over 2,000 schools. And what happens on the other side? So you have the teachers and the pedagogues that are based in Manaus. They have a production studio. It looks like a TV studio. And over there, they create all the learning materials that are adequate, and they transmit these lessons in real time so that the students on the other side can learn. And this doesn't mean only that they can learn. During this time where they have access to the internet, they can also talk to their family members, their friends that might be living in other places. So if you go to the classrooms, actually, you can see, or sometimes you can see that these kids are with their phones and are chatting at the same time. So it also brings other types of opportunities. And when we were studying this project, what we realized is that in order to be able to place the satellite dish in the school and know where the schools are and be able to deliver these educational programs, you first need to know where the schools are. And if I would give you this map of the Amazon rainforest, and I would ask you where are the schools, it would be very difficult to locate them and plan such a program in an efficient way, so making sure that you are not forgetting anyone. So that's where the Project Connect initiative started. That was around 2 years ago. And you may think that this is a very obvious, easy question, that governments should know where their schools are. but it turns out that this is not the case all the time. There are many governments that don't know where all their schools are, or sometimes the data is not correct, may have some gaps, and or might not be accurate. The map that you see here it's the results of our work that we've just released, that we've done recently in Colombia. Over there we used satellite imagery and machine learning to automatically map schools, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the work in a bit. But here the results show the red dots that you see in the beginning are the schools that we got initially from the government, the official data set, and the yellow ones that you see afterwards are the new schools that we were able to map thanks to these machine learning techniques. And this allowed us to find 7,000 schools that were not recorded in the official data set. And this is already a huge increase in a country like Colombia. Yeah, so how does this machine learning automatic detection work? So basically, we use school locations as training, and the machine tries to find patterns that are unique or characteristics for schools. And here in this image, you can see some of the examples. The images in the left are the ones that belong to schools. So you can see that often schools have these U shapes or square shapes. The buildings are usually slightly bigger than buildings around them. The material of the roof is different from the material of the buildings around them as well. And sometimes they also have playgrounds or other specific features that are unique to schools. And the machine is able to automatically learn these features. And then whenever you feed or you input a new image, it's able to tell you whether it's likely to belong to a school or not. So that's in the left. And the ones on the right are other type of images that don't belong to schools. And these are some of the types that we identified. So of course, if it's a rural area with no clear building or residential houses, that's not gonna be a school. But there are other ones that might be more similar, such as group of factory buildings that sometimes might look more similar and might be more difficult for the machine learning algorithm or model to identify the school over there. We've done this in Liberia and Colombia so far. We've partnered with different actors such as UNICEF. We've also worked with academia, the University of San Diego. We've worked with other companies like Development Seed. And then now we are looking into how can we scale this and how can we build the infrastructure and the platform to run this at scale and test it in other areas as well. And this is the outcome. So this is the map that we've created for Colombia. We've combined this technique of satellite imagery and machine learning with other techniques as well to create this map. And in this map, the dots are schools, are the school locations, and they are colored based on their connectivity status or connectivity level. The green dots are areas that are in a good place. It means that the connectivity level is acceptable. In this case, the threshold we use is 3 megabits per second. The orange ones are the ones that have some kind of connectivity but might not be good enough to be able to watch a video or maybe download a big file. And then all the red dots are the schools that don't have any kind of connectivity. In Colombia in particular, we've mapped around 50,000 schools, and then we've been working with partners such as Red Hat to build prototypes to use this to prepare and respond to emergencies. And as I was saying, to create these maps, we've combined different techniques. One of them is the machine learning and the satellite imagery one, but then we've also used more traditional methods. So most of the times we work very closely with local governments and UNICEF country offices as well as other agencies. So we go to different ministries in the government, most of the time Ministry of Education and Ministry of ICT, and we try to map out what's the data that already exists and what's the data that's already available. And we do some cleaning, some analysis of that data, and we combine all the existing data before we put it in our platform. And then in the extreme cases where some of the data might not exist, we try to find alternatives to get that. So for the case of connectivity, we've also been working with tech companies like Facebook, mobile network operators, etc., to get this data from them. And You may think that school connectivity is mostly for education, but that's not the case. The red dots, or the places where there is no connectivity, are a proxy or an indicator for vulnerability. It's more likely that diseases will spread more faster in these places. It's going to be harder to do a vaccination campaign in these areas. It will be harder to reach with learning materials these areas, or even to send supplies to these areas. And it's going to be harder for people to also have access to basic services such banking, financing, etc. But this also has another side. It also means that these areas are new business opportunities for mobile operators, banks, the companies, etc., so that they can reach new markets. So we see this as an opportunity, and our idea is to find a way so that we can reach these places. Up to date, we've been able to map around 10-15 countries, and we have data for over 600,000 schools in different countries. Out of those, we have connectivity data for around 125,000. And we've been using this mapping in a variety of ways. So, for instance, in Kyrgyzstan, the government has used the mapping to start connecting the schools to the internet. When we started this project 1.5 years ago, they didn't have the mapping. And once we did the mapping of around 2,000 of the 2,000 public schools in the country, they realized that almost 700 of them were still not connected. Based on that, the government released or committed to connect all the remaining schools to the internet. And they had a public tender where different providers bid it, and Kyrgyz Telecom won this tender. And since then, this happened in November, December. Since then, they've already connected around 400 schools, and they are hoping to finish the 700 by June. So we've already seen that the very basic thing of, sometimes the data exists, but the very basic thing of putting it in a map in an easy way already shows to the government where the gaps are, and they start taking action based on that. And the idea over the next year is to start scaling this up. And now that we have this mapping and we've seen that it's useful for governments to take action on that, we are already thinking on what's next. So now we also have these new technologies that are coming up. We have low Earth orbit satellites that are able to deliver connectivity in places where it wasn't possible before. So we have recently started thinking on how can we create a financing mechanism or a platform where we can start bringing different partners, both from the UN, but also from the private sector, governments, etc., so that we can start reaching these populations, children and communities that usually are not included in these connectivity plans. And this is the roadmap that we have mapped out for the next year or so. So the first one is to complete the Project Connect, to complete the mapping, because I believe that this is a foundation for the next steps. You first need to understand where is the demand, where is the need, and then start taking action based on that. So we want to scale the platform globally. We want to map the remaining world, and we also want to start getting more real-time, up-to-date data on school connectivity in these different regions. So we are looking for partners, or if any of you would be interested in working with us, either on the data side, but also if going to the governments and working together with them to create these maps and understanding how can be useful for the local governments, we would be happy to work with you. And once we have the mapping, we are setting up this common bid for connectivity. So we are using the analogy to Gavi. I don't know if you are familiar with Gavi, but this was this mechanism that UNICEF, together with others, started around 20-30 years ago to pull demand on vaccines and then make sure that the big pharmaceutical companies were delivering vaccines to the hardest to reach areas, and developing countries were able to purchase these vaccines for a fair price. We are looking into doing something similar for connectivity, creating this common bid where different partners from the UN, but then also mobile network operators, service providers, big banks like World Bank, etc., come together and we go to the service providers to negotiate prices and make sure that they are delivering fair pricing. On this, we are still in the very early stages. So again, any brands, anyone that is willing to be part of this, we are looking for partners because we know that this is a huge thing and we cannot do this alone. There were some meetings last week in San Francisco for the UN Broadband Commission, where UNICEF's executive director, as well as Chris, the co-founder of the Innovation Lab, was there. And they had several conversations with ITU, President Kagame from Rwanda, etc. And from there, it's been decided that we are gonna actually pursue this. ITU and UNICEF are officially gonna start working on this. There is a working group within the UN Broadband Commission that it's gonna be created around this school connectivity. So we are willing to partner even with more UN organizations so that they can help us think on this, because we are in the very early stages. So yeah, we are looking for partners that can help us shape this, flesh this out, and start working on it. And then the end goal through this is to create these public goods, digital public goods, like the Amazonas case study that I showed earlier, that will be accessible to young people and communities through this connectivity. And these are digital services, content, and applications that, thanks to this connectivity, communities will have access to and will enable them to have better opportunities and a brighter future.